What's the point in going through the process of identifying your priorities in this season of life or narrowing down your goals for 2026 if you're not going to actually find the time that you have to invest in these two areas of your life? The reality is, you can never make time for what's important to you, and you're not going to find time to get after those goals. Allocation of your most valuable resource, time, takes a specific concerted effort. And I do this every season with a simple activity called building your ideal week. This is a strategy that I've been using for years. And if we've never met before, hi, my name is Dr. Jamie. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist who focuses on organized, calm, and sustainable productivity in my work with high achievers. And this is one of those strategies that is really eye-opening to a lot of people. Some people are really pleasantly surprised about how much they can fit into their week. Other people gain a lot of clarity about why they're not able to meet some of their goals, or why they find like their life is not in alignment with the things that are actually important to them. I'm going to walk you through the step-by-step process that I use, as well as the process that I use with my clients. So let's go ahead and get started. I like to start with a totally blank Google Calendar. And I am also a fan of making multiple Google Calendars for two reasons. First, I really care about aesthetics, and when you make your own individual calendars, you can actually pick the colors, and you have more colors than just this palette that is the default palette that Google provides. So I like to make my own calendar for that. I also like this ability to turn calendars on and off. And you can do that when you have multiple calendars. And that's something that you can't do if you just use one calendar, but use a color coding system. So I start by making multiple calendars. At different times of my life, I've had a different number of calendars. The very first thing that I'm going to schedule in are things known as time constraints. These are specific time-based appointments that I have for work or for my family obligations. I like to start with work because I do have a 9 to 5 job. And even though that is my lowest priority item in terms of my current life domains, I still need to keep a 9 to 5 job. So that is essential for me. So I'm going to start off with the specific meetings that I have. I have identified any recurring weekly meetings, and I've also identified things like monthly meetings. Even though they only happen once a month, I like to look at my ideal week using the worst case scenario. This counteracts something that we know about human nature known as the planning fallacy. In the behavioral science literature, we know that when planning, people tend to be overly optimistic about what they can accomplish and tend to downgrade things like having environmental interference. That's random things that show up in your calendar that you don't remember, or random asks of other people. Knowing that tendency, I go with the worst case scenario when it comes to actually blocking out time for these meetings. Some of the meetings here are weekly meetings, things like my Monday at 10 o'clock and Tuesday at 11 o'clock. Those are things that happen every week, and they happen at the same date and time. You'll see that I have two team meetings here. I don't actually have two team meetings. This meeting is run by another team lead, and she tends to be a little flaky about when we're going to meet. Sometimes she'll cancel the Monday meeting and move it to Tuesday, or vice versa. So, in order to account for that, I just have two meeting times. I block that time off so I'm not regularly scheduling things between 9 and 10 on Monday, nor am I scheduling things between 9 or 10 on Tuesday, so that she has that flexibility. I do have some side eye, but these are the things that are outside of my control. And as an adult, I want to be realistic about the time constraints that I have so that I can have a realistic ideal week. You'll also notice that I have 5 monthly meetings. These monthly meetings aren't always happening on the same week, but I'm using the same scheduling principle here, where I'm blocking out those periods of time because I don't want to have anything habitually scheduled for the times when these monthly meetings are taking place. I'm also noticing something else from a psychological behavioral science perspective. Seeing that these meetings take place at different days of the week, at different time slots for different durations, helps me understand why it feels like some of these monthly meetings come out of nowhere. Also, the duration of time between monthly meetings contributes to that feeling of feeling a little off kilter. Monthly meetings are only appropriate for certain topics. There is a great book called The Science of Meetings. And yes, I am that nerdy that I also want to optimize how I run meetings. This was particularly helpful for me when I was the director of a large behavioral science research lab. We had so many scientists and so many studies going on at one time. This was really helpful. In my current position, I'm more of a consultant. So I am dropping into different teams and helping in different ways. So I have less control about the timing, frequency, duration of meetings, or even the topics. This is something that I'm learning to live with. And it is also why I want to start off here with the time constraints. Because as a working adult, I don't have 100% control of all of the hours of my week. So it's important for me to understand what are these external demands that are being made of me. Now, fortunately, my job is not just sad meetings. I do still keep a clinical caseload, meaning that I see patients in clinical care as a psychologist 4 hours out of my week. So I've blocked out clinical practice because I'm required to be in the clinic, and clearly I want to be there for my patients. I also have some coaching clients. I have 2 hours a week set aside for coaching. I currently have one open hour. So that's why you'll see two blocks here. I have blocked out that period of time because I don't want to schedule anything on that second hour. And you'll see that I have some overlap here because I have a scheduled coaching client in the coming week. These are all my recurrent time constraints at work. That's when I'm required to be at a certain place at a certain date and time. But I have other things outside of my 9 to 5. The thing that is the most pressing on my time are things related to my kid. So I currently have a teenage son, but he's not able to drive yet. He's 15. So that means that I am still playing chauffeur. Fortunately, my husband is in charge of things related to my kid in the morning. He takes him into school every day. I need to pick him up. And the difference is that there is an option for my kid to get to school on the school bus in the morning, but there's no option for him to take the school bus in the afternoon. The issue with our school system is that there are no buses for after school activities, and my son is on 3 sports teams. So he is doing after school activities all along the school year. So that is my requirement. So that's another specific time constraint. I keep everything related to my son here under this family calendar. I have it coded in this blue, and here you'll see the specific time constraints regarding his pickup time. So he needs to be picked up between 4:30 and 5:30, and it is a really long block of time because sometimes his practice is over at 4:30, sometimes it's over as late as 5:30, and there's not a lot of forewarning about when he's going to be getting out. So sometimes I'll get a call randomly like, "Mom, I'm ready to be picked up." Well, his school is 20 minutes away from both my house and my job, so it's going to take me 20 minutes to get there. So I try to be there at 4:30, and even if I have to wait a little bit longer, I prefer to be there a little bit earlier. If you've seen any of my other videos, I utilize that time wisely. I have a context specific task list. I have a task list just for things that I can do while I'm in the car waiting for my son. But that tells you something about how much of a time investment this pickup is. It is an hour blocked, and I block it from Monday through Friday because I do have to pick him up from Monday through Friday. That is actually my very last time constraints. After I've done my work time constraints and my mom related time constraints, I get to move on to the next phase of planning, which is scheduling out times for my priorities. Now, I went through a whole process of establishing my life priorities for this season of life, so this year, and I also go through the process of establishing what my central focus is for every season of the year. So, for this first 90 days of 2026, my two top priorities are my family and my YouTube channel. So, I'm going to go ahead and put in specific blocks of time that I'm dedicating to those major priorities. The first thing I'm going to do is schedule in dinner time with my family. I want to do that 4 nights a week. So I'm doing that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You'll also see that I have a large block of time here on Saturday. Usually we're at a cross country meet or a track and field meet. During the winter, it's a little tough because his meets are usually during the week, and it can be challenging for us to find things that we genuinely like to do together. Lately, I've been spending this time in a way that I love, thanks to the partner of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning platform with thousands of classes. I really like how it lets us explore our common interest toward a focused goal. So we've been working on some art projects together. My son is a much better digital artist than me, but we both like and enjoy manga. So we decided to spend some of our time on Saturdays learning a new skill together. Last Saturday, we tried this fun, kawaii manga inspired illustration class using Procreate. And we especially like these classes from Unicorn. They feel like the kind of projects that are approachable for me, but still interesting for him. And it's just fun to sit down and create together in this kind of low key way. Even though he's way better, the point of taking these classes together is to spend that time together, laugh together, and create together in a way that feels meaningful and it's hitting both of our interests. That's super hard to do with a teenager, and definitely different than how I'm using Skillshare on Sundays when I've carved out a dedicated period of time for me to focus on advancing my video editing skills. The productivity psychologist is the next thing that I'm prioritizing in this season of life, and one of the things that I'm doing is investing in external editors and also investing in my own skill set and learning how to do things like making my videos more engaging or learning new graphic skills. Lately, I've been playing around with using Canva as a video editor, and I'm really proud of myself being able to do things like this. I love that I can use the same platform to spend quality time with my son as well as advancing my video editing skills. And if this sounds like something you'd enjoy, Skillshare is currently offering a free 1 month trial to the first 500 people to click on the link down below or who scan this QR code. Thank you so much to Skillshare for partnering with me on this video. Now let's get back to finding pockets of time where I can focus on my priority of building up the productivity psychologist. My next big priority for the first 90 days of the year is focusing on this YouTube channel. So you'll see that I have dedicated most of Sunday, Saturday evening, and multiple evenings to focus on the productivity psychologist work. That includes everything from scripting, filming, editing. I've also given myself office hours where I can do administrative portions of the productivity psychologist, things like responding to emails or interacting with external helpers, people like editors. So I have dedicated time slots for that. Most of Sunday is going to be spent doing that. And I also have a big chunk of time on Friday evenings that I have chosen to devote to the productivity psychologist. This is another time when it's helpful to bring in some psychology and behavioral science into planning your week. The productivity psychologist is so important to me in this stage of my life that it brings me joy and energy. Some people will say that on a Friday night, they need to do some low energy tasks because they're tired from the day. I feel super energized when I sign off of my computer at my 9 to 5 on Friday afternoon. Part of this is being part of a military family. We move a lot, so I move from job to job. And most of the time, I love my 9 to 5 job. Sometimes it takes a little getting used to, or sometimes it's just not a good fit. And generally, I move on to the next organization. Currently, several aspects of my 9 to 5 job aren't filling my cup. So, outside of my clinical work and my coaching, I am not getting a whole lot of fulfillment from that. After hours, especially on Fridays, I seem to have a burst of energy. And I know this because I went through the process of actually tracking my energy. I'll leave an entire video up here on how I did that. But I know that I have this surge of energy and a surge of creativity on Fridays. So I want to capitalize that and focus that energy on things that are a high priority for me. So I know that about me. And when you're doing an ideal week for yourself, it's important to take that into account. That'll come up later when we're talking about scheduling pockets of time for deep work and for shallow work, and how knowing yourself and knowing your natural energy fluctuations is really helpful. But I wanted to point that out while we were here talking about the productivity psychologist. I've also been very deliberate about leaving out one day where I'm not doing anything related to the productivity psychologist. I'm coming off of a high paced season, the end of the year, starting a new live cohort, and also a lot of New Year's content had me posting twice a week, which is twice as much as I usually do. And I was running a little bit on hyperdrive. So I wanted to take a moment to actually spend at least one evening away from the productivity psychologist, but still ensuring that I'm reserving my large chunks of free time or high energy time for the productivity psychologist. This calendar currently has my time constraints and my two highest priorities. Now let's move on to the habits that are going to move my goals forward. If you've seen any of my goal videos, you know that the science supports having just 1 to 3 goals at a time. And taking those goals and breaking them down into specific actions increases the likelihood that you'll achieve those goals. Taking that one step even further, having a specific date and time where you're going to take those specific actions also increases the likelihood that you're going to achieve those goals. So I have an entire calendar that I call routines, and that is setting aside dedicated, focused time to take the actions that are going to move me toward my goals. My 3 goals for February involve one yearly goal, a long term goal, one quarterly goal, a goal that I'm trying to hit in the next 90 days, and one monthly goal or a monthly focus. The long term yearly goal that I'm working on is being consistent here on YouTube and the specific amount of videos that I want to post. So I already have large chunks of time dedicated to the productivity psychologist. And so that's dedicated toward that long term goal. I also have a fitness goal, and you'll see that I have CrossFit here 5 days a week. I also have an additional day of working out at home. My goal is to work out 6 times a week, so that gives me my 6 out of 7. And the focus for the month of February is to focus on my finances, automating more of my finances, doing a financial health check, and setting up the systems that I'll need to make sure that my finances are all set for the year. So I've dedicated an hour of time on Saturday before I go off to do my family activities to focus on finances. Now, this calendar has an added layer of what behavioral scientists call implementation intentions. That is the act of identifying the specific actions that you want to take toward a goal and actually assigning a specific date and time where you're going to do it. The more specific that you get, the better. For example, I don't just say I want to work out 6 days a week. I want to do CrossFit 5 days a week. I want to do an at-home workout 1 day a week. I'm going to do CrossFit from 6:30 to 7:30 a.m. and I'm going to do my at-home workout on Sundays from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. So I've been really specific about what I'm actually going to do, and that substantially increases the likelihood that you'll actually engage in that action. All right, now comes another harsh reality. For many of us, being a working professional doesn't just mean that you have to be in the office from 9 to 5. It also means that you likely have other life responsibilities that require your time, energy, or attention. The next thing I'm going to do is actually put those into my calendar so that I can start to visualize these little life admin tasks and how much time they're actually taking up in my physical week. And this does get a little sad for me since I live in a large metro area. Once I put in all of my life admin, you'll see that I have a 30-minute commute to the CrossFit box where I work out. Then I have a 30-minute commute back. I'm a human that requires cleaning and I have to get dressed to go to work. So I have a little morning routine there. And then I have a 30-minute commute back to work. So in my morning from 6 to 9, There is actually 2 hours of that 3 hour block that's taken up by this admin time. Things like commuting places, or things like taking a shower, eating breakfast, moving from one place to another. This movement from place to place is one of the waste categories that organizational psychologists use when they're trying to increase efficiency in organizations, which is why it makes my heart a little sad when I look at how much light blue is in this calendar. I can also see where my commute time changes a little bit. So on Fridays, since I do keep all coaching private and I'm coaching individuals within the organization where I work, I try to take all of those coaching calls at home just so that they can have a little bit of added privacy. So I'm not commuting in until a little bit later. I also noticed that I have a late monthly meeting that happens on Tuesdays. So on Tuesdays, I actually regularly commute a little bit earlier so that I can take that monthly meeting on the road. So I commute from work to the high school parking lot and then I take my call from there. This is an example of why actually writing out some of those life admin tasks is really helpful, because I know that I need to leave 30 minutes earlier than usual on Tuesdays, especially when I have this monthly meeting. And it helps me establish a regular routine and cadence, which is one of the added benefits of doing an ideal week. One of the reasons why I take this time to set up this ideal week is that I want to routinize as much as possible. We know from a purely behavioral standpoint that it's easier to engage in behaviors when they become routines. And even at a neurological level, it takes less brain power for you to engage in things that you do over and over again. So rather than trying to remember that I need to leave work 30 minutes early the second Tuesday of every month, I simply modify my schedule and work hours so that I'm leaving 30 minutes early every Tuesday and I'm engaging in remote work for that extra hour. Finally, I also put in some of my household chores. Things like doing the laundry is my responsibility in my household, so I have that listed here. And I also do a 30-minute tidy because I've identified keeping a neat and tidy home as a priority and something that I value. And that is another way to keep my values and my goals clearly reflected in my calendar. Let's address the white elephant in the room, and that is all of this white space in my calendar during my work hours, which are from 9 to 4. Just because there's not a meeting in my calendar doesn't mean that I am not doing work. In fact, it means that I'm getting my work done between those meetings. I ascribe to Cal Newport's classification of work tasks as either deep work or shallow work, and I need long periods of time to invest in deep work. So I'm looking for long stretches where I can schedule that in. You'll see that I actually only have deep work scheduled for the entire day on Friday and the morning on Thursday. And there's a really specific reason for that. After looking at how my energy fluctuates in this current position, I know that after meetings, I am psychologically drained and I don't have the energy or the mental bandwidth or focus required for engaging in deep work. So if I have an early morning meeting, I know that I'm not going to be able to get deep work done. At the same time, on Friday, I have my coaching, which gives me energy. And then I commute in and I have a large block of deep work. On Thursdays, I have no early morning meetings. So I have a 2 hour block of deep work that's followed by a potential meeting and then sometimes even two meetings on that day. Deep work might get done during that time, but I'm not going to fall into that trap of planning for the best version of me. I'm planning for the most likely version of me. That means that I have a whole bunch of time left over for shallow work. Now, again, depending on the type of work environment that you have, it might be important for you to understand the ratio between deep work and shallow work. My current job requires quite a bit of shallow work. That's things like responding to emails, going to specific offices and checking in on their progress, status reports, trackers. All of that is considered shallow work for me. It's a large portion of my job and it does require a certain amount of time investment. The only difference here is on Wednesdays, I have a large chunk of clinical practice that could be for patients that day. And then I need to do proper documentation, which isn't really considered shallow work. It's more proper medical documentation. But I know that it's a requirement after I engage in clinical practice. So I want to make sure that I have actually blocked off at least 2 hours for the administrative side of clinical practice. I also have monthly meetings that sometimes pop up in that afternoon time block. So I want to make sure that I'm not depending on that time for engaging in deep work. Now, it's not to say that this is how every week is going to go. Sometimes I will have more deep work and I do want to schedule it in to these specific time slots. But I have a general understanding of the capacity that I have for deep work projects versus shallow work projects. And when a new thing comes up at work, I can ask myself, do I have the time resources required to take on this new task? And if I don't, what am I willing to let go so that I'm not overcommitting at work, just like I'm not overcommitting in my personal life? All right, let's fill in the rest of the calendar. I noticed in my annual review of 2025 that I had almost no time for rest and relaxation. So I'm trying to make a concerted effort to have some leisure time built into my ideal week. So on Wednesdays, after I do kind of the shallow work of the business, some of those administrative tasks, I actually have blocked out an hour for a mini dopamine detox where I'm doing no work of any kind. I also am trying to bring back my self care evening on Sundays where I might take a long bath or do my nails, some sort of self care. So, because it is something that's important to me, I want to see that actually reflected in my calendar. Finally, I have one offs, things like hobbies or projects. I am currently taking Japanese lessons, and that happens on Thursday evenings at 7 o'clock. I am also taking full advantage of being a member of the Skillshare community by taking advantage of those editing courses. And I have blocked out some time here on Sundays before I do my weekly review and reset to advancing a skill set. I do notice that I have one block of time open here, and that is probably because after my workout, it takes me a little while to take a shower and get dressed so that I can show up here for the productivity psychologist. So this is going to be morning routine, and I am going to put that under the life admin calendar. And now that is fully accounted for. And I know that I wake up a little bit later on Sunday. I also go to sleep a little bit later on Friday and Saturdays. So that is why this space down here is fairly open. Let me know in the comment section down below if you tried this exercise for yourself. If you have set up your own ideal week, I'm interested to know what was the most surprising part of the process. Please share it in the comment section down below. If you want to check out how I identified all of my priorities and goals for 2026, check out this video right here, or check out this video that YouTube thinks you'll like.